Number 989. 989. I really don't even know how to sing this song, let alone lead it. It says the chorus you sing after the last verse on, or the third stanza. So we'll do that. We'll sing the three stanzas and then make that chorus. You're my strength when I am weak. You're the treasure that I seek. You're my all in all. Seeking you as a precious jewel. Lord, to be loved I'd be a fool. You are my all in all. Taking my sin, my cross, my shame, rising again, I bless your name. You are my all in all. When I fall down, you pick me up. When I am dry, you fill my cup. You are my all in all. When the dark powers had done their worst, Jesus brought victory o'er their curse. He is our all in all. Death could not hold the King of Kings. Now to his heirs new life he breathes. He is our all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Number 650. 650. Let's go. Bucky, would you mind to lead us in prayer following this song? The sands of time are sinking, the dawn of heaven breaks, the summer morn I sigh for, the fair sweet morn awaits. Dark, dark had been the midnight, but day's spring is at hand, and glory, glory dwelleth in Emmanuel's land. O Christ, He is the fountain, the deep, sweet well of love. The streams on earth I tasted, more deep I'll drink above. There to an ocean fullness, His mercy doth expand, and glory, glory dwelleth in Emmanuel's land. The bright eyes not her garment, but her dear bridegroom's face. I will not gaze at glory, but on my King of grace. Not at the crown He giveth, Yeah. 118. 118. Rick requested this to go along with this lesson. First, second, to last verse. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. Are you ever burdened with a load of care? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings, every doubt will fly, and you will be singing as the days go by. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is over all. Count your many blessings, angels will attend, help and comfort give you to your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. 760 be the song of encouragement. 760.
I asked Clint to lead that song because it talks about how that sometimes in our lives we look at others, maybe with their land and gold, and that's verse 3, we didn't sing it, but we look at others and see how they seem to be doing good and everything, and maybe we don't feel like we're doing as good as they are or have been blessed the way that they have been blessed. Or maybe that we're going through a rough time because something has been taken away from us that we hold so dear, and we wonder why. Why does this happen, or whatever it may be. I've always taken the words of that song to mean that what we need to do is count our blessings and then compare them to what we don't have or the one that's been taken away, and see that we've got so much more that we can be thankful for or whatever. But I don't think that's the way that it needs to be taken whenever it talks about counting our blessings, because when we do that, then a lot of times we won't focus really on what we have, but what we don't have. Yeah, I have this, but I had rather have this over here. I would consider this over here being so much more of a blessing or whatever. And then sometimes we don't realize things that are blessings to us. Things that, we think in terms of things that make us happy, things that make us comfortable, things that make us in some way enjoy or whatever life more. It's just an easier, smoother ride as far as life is concerned. And sometimes the blessings of life are those things that make the road bumpy, that make the road curvy, that make it to where that we have to stop and actually look at life and ask ourselves, what is important. Tonight we're going to take a look at an example, an Old Testament example, of someone who had the proper attitude toward those things that occurred to him, that anybody in the right mind, or so we would think, would say, well, that's not a blessing. But he saw it as being one. I was watching a short clip of an interview with a Vietnam vet who had been a prisoner of war, and he had done time in the Hanoi Hilton and different things. But in that interview, he said, one of the greatest blessings of my life was being in prison for ever how long he was in there, maybe 7 years or something. He said it caused me to look at life differently and to see life being a day at a time, and just take things as they come. Now, there's very few people that went through that experience of the Hanoi Hilton and all the torture that they went through that would probably say that. But he did. I've also been watching The Chosen, and some of you have seen it. Some of you have heard Marty talk about it and different things. Just recently figured out that I could watch season 4 for free, so I did that. And they take some artistic license, there's no doubt about that, but they're trying to present the apostles as just people, just like we are. And so they present Thomas as being, and I think this is going to try to explain why he doubted some, but as being someone who lost a loved one while he himself was serving Jesus. And then Lazarus was raised, and the question comes up, well, why couldn't you have raised my loved one? Why did you raise Lazarus and not my loved one? That's unfair. I don't understand that. I'm giving my life to you. Why couldn't you help my loved one? Little James, or James the Less, is presented as a person who has kind of a handicap. He hurts all the time, walks with a limp and so forth. But the question that he asks, from time to time, or within the conversations that they have, is, I wonder why Jesus can heal all of these other people, and he actually gave me the power to heal people in the limited commission, but he won't heal me. Life's just not fair. It's just not fair. Why do those things happen to us? And that's some things that we question from time to time. But what we learned from Joseph, and this is Genesis chapter 39, what we learned from Joseph is that we can deal with life's unfairness as long as we can feel God's arm around our shoulders. We can deal with life's unfairness as long as we can feel God's arms around our shoulder. Now, Joseph is a 17-year-old boy who went from overnight of being a princely son of a wealthy Bedouin in the land of Canaan to being a shackled slave owned by an Egyptian secret service man. He went from having all kinds of freedoms and rights and things to having no freedom and no rights as far as he was concerned. Now, if there was ever a true story of calamity that was unfair as far as we are concerned, giving him a reason to just lose it, well, this would be the story. But we find that he didn't do that at all. In fact, it did just the opposite as far as he was concerned. Let's read the text together. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph. He became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Joseph has been sold into slavery by his brothers. Right now, he's got to be feeling, this is not fair. This is not the dreams that I had. This is not what it seemed that God had in mind for me. This is not fair. Because I'm a slave now. But he saw his situation. He took it one day at a time, and he served his master. And because of that, the Lord blessed him. And he had a certain amount of freedom. He had a certain amount of responsibilities. He had a certain amount of trust that was given unto him so that he ruled the man's house. He just ran the man's house, or whatever it may have been. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her to lie beside her or to be with her. But one day when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house." Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of his house." As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, life so unfair, has worked his way seemingly by God's blessing into a position to where that if you had to be a slave, this is the best position you've got. His wife, the master's wife, takes a look at him. He does what's right. He does exactly what's right, and yet she accuses him of trying to violate her. And thus, he is cast into prison. Life is so unfair as far as Joseph is concerned. But then we notice, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Joseph was one of those who it just seemed like life did not treat him fairly at all. And yet every place he wound up, places that we would not want to be, he took advantage of it. And he did what God wanted him to do. He acted rationally. He acted humbly. He acted responsibly. And as a result, God blessed him. Still seeming unfair, but yet that's how he handled the situation. And that's the reason that we can say that we can deal with life's unfairness as long as we can feel God's arms around our shoulders. We can deal with life's unfairness. It's one of the great things that Christianity has for us and gives to us. It tells us life is going to be unfair as far as you are concerned. There's going to be other people that are going to get more in this life than what you have. It doesn't mean that they're blessed more. It just means that they have more. In fact, that could be a far greater headache for them to have more than you have. It could be a far greater temptation for them to have more than you have. It could be that that takes them down the road to eternal condemnation rather than the road to serving God, them having more than you have. And so, though it may look unfair in this life, it's not really an unfairness. It's not really that they're blessed more. You may recall how that Peter, at one point, Jesus made the statement that anybody who gave up houses and lands and family and all that kind of stuff for my sake would receive 100-fold, in later, or would receive 100-fold. And Peter asked the question, we've given up everything. What will we receive? And I could understand why Peter would ask that. I mean, we've given up everything to follow you. We're going through all of these towns and teaching these things, and we're learning all this stuff, and you're saying that we're going to be in charge of this and kind of the foundation as far as the church is concerned. Are we going to receive thousands instead of 100-fold? What are we going to receive? And of course, Jesus would tell him, you're going to receive things, but it's not going to be what you're thinking. You're going to have a position, but it's not going to be the way that you think that it is. And to my knowledge, Peter never received anything material from it. In fact, we are told through tradition that he wound up being crucified and chose to be crucified upside down because he said he didn't deserve to be crucified the way Jesus was. We do know that he lost his life, at least at some point, because of his devotion to Jesus. Now, some would say unfair. Anybody that would give up what Peter and go through what Peter and Paul and all the other apostles went through, they should have received something out of it, some kind of wages. Well, they did receive the gift of salvation, the gift of heaven. And thus there was that blessing there. And we can deal with life's unfairness if we can feel God's arms about us. To deal with the situation, whenever we talk about dealing with life's unfairness, I'm talking about to deal with a situation or to handle a situation with self-control and to come through it with our integrity intact on the other side. To maintain a firm grip on reality and what this world and what this life is all about. To maintain a firm grip on our reactions to the seemingly devastating situations that we're placed within. To react in such a controlled way that we do not compromise our faith and integrity. Joseph, once again, could have gone off in Potiphar's household. I'm going to get what's mine. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to serve myself. After all, nothing else has worked out right, and I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. He could have done that. He could have done the same thing in the prison. But what we find Joseph practicing is honesty and trustworthiness. Both Potiphar and the prison guard, or the head of the prison, placed him in the highest of positions. And whatever they placed under his control, they didn't even ask him about it. They didn't have to worry about it. They knew it was going to be taken care of. Whether it be money or whether it be responsibilities or the prisoners themselves, they knew it would be taken care of. He presented himself as being very respectful. He respected Potiphar's position and he respected Potiphar's possessions. Potiphar's my master. I don't like it maybe, but that's just the way it is. And I respect the position that he's in. Hard work. You find that stressed within the passages here, the things that we read. Intelligence. Joseph did not use his intelligence to be conniving, to be deceitful, to try to figure out a way of escape, to try to figure out a way of, in some way, getting out of the situation. He used his intelligence to better himself in the situation he was in. And in so doing, brought glory to God, glory and honor to God, because we find him having spiritual discernment and faithfulness. Where did Potiphar get the idea that God was blessing Joseph? Potiphar didn't know who God was. Joseph had to have told him about who he serves and about who he believed in and whatever. And anything that happened, Joseph had to have said, it's God. God is the one that's taking care of me. God is the one doing this. So it is stated there about Potiphar that he saw, put him in charge from the time that he made him overseer for Joseph. Anyway, he saw that it was indeed God who was causing Joseph to be blessed, and thus Potiphar's house to be blessed. Morality. Joseph was one of those who, because of his faith in God, could identify what sin was and say, I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm not going to be dishonest. I'm not going to be a thief. I'm not going to be one who commits adultery with my master's wife, or who tries to take advantage of certain situations to get something better out of life or anything like that. But he was one who decided that he would be moral. And he did not allow peer pressure, that is from fellow prisoners, to dictate his actions. When we go through difficult times, when we go through times that are unfair, we do not have to, nor should we allow our circumstances to dictate our conduct. To me, the passages within the New Testament that show what Joseph was like and what Paul is telling us that we need to be like when life is unfair are the passages that deal with bondservants and their masters. In Ephesians chapter 6, verses 5 through 8, Paul would write, "Bondservants, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart, as you would Christ, not by the way of eye service or people pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man, knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or is free." Paul would tell the Ephesian brethren there who may have been bondservants, whether they were slaves as we think of, or whether they were just simply indentured servants or whatever. He's saying you've got a master, and you obey that master. You work for him, you work to encourage him and to build up his estate or whatever it may be, knowing that you are working for Jesus in doing so, knowing that you are showing Jesus to this individual by the humbleness, the humility, the morality, the sensibility, all that you give to him. You're showing Jesus to them, and you will receive that back. And that's exactly how Joseph felt as far as his unfairness was concerned. Colossians chapter 3, verses 22 through 25, basically the same thing. But he says, "Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with the sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. For the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality." So Paul tells the bondservants there, whether you got a good master or a bad master, you just serve him. You do the very best that you can in the situation that you're in, even if it looks as if life is unfair. You continue to do the work because you know that God's arm is around you. You know that what you're doing is showing that person the true humility of a Christian and the love of a Christian. And God knows that. And he will use it. And you will be blessed as a result of the things that you do. Joseph saw that. Joseph understood that. And thus it was that as long as he could feel God's arms around his shoulders he knew that God would in some way bring him out of the situation, and that God would in some way make his situation a blessing to others. We realize how God did that through his being placed in second highest in Egypt, his being able to bring his siblings down and his father down into Egypt. That would establish them. It was a working of God's promise to Abraham and the growth of the nation to the point that eventually he would take them out. But Joseph saw all of this. Maybe it was hindsight, maybe there was a little bit of present sight, but he saw all of this and realized this. We see this in Genesis chapter 45, verses 4 through 9. When Joseph makes himself known to his brethren, he would tell them, "Come near to me, please." And they came near. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt." He'll go on and say, you go and you tell my father and bring my father down here. But you'll notice how that Joseph, throughout all of this, he could feel God's arm around him. And thus, even though life was unfair, seemingly so unfair, he was able to work his way through it. Even whenever, and every day after the baker and the butler, the dreams were told and the butler was put back into power, he was still in there for 2 years. And every day almost for 2 years, when's the butler going to tell Pharaoh about me? When's the butler going to tell Pharaoh about me? When am I going to get out of here? Had to be questioning that. And yet he was able to do so because he knew it would be in God's time that things would happen and that he would be brought out. Another illustration of this is in chapter 50, verses 19 through 21. Whenever Jacob has died, Israel has died, and the brothers are scared now. They're thinking, well, now that Daddy's gone, Joseph's going to bring back all that we've done upon us. He's going to repay us for it. He's just been biding his time until Daddy passed away. But here's what Joseph told them. "Do not fear, for I am in the place of God. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Life is one of those things that's going to be unfair. And we can be experiencing the greatest blessings that we think are the greatest blessings. Everything can be going great. Everything seems to be going smooth. All of a sudden that's taken away. All of a sudden that's gone. And we can question, and we can ask, and we can wonder, but we can make it through it if we can understand that God has a plan and that we can feel his arms about us. Our social standing may change from prince to prisoner, yet if we faithfully follow God above all else, God is with us. All you got to do is ask Joseph about that. We may go from being a high commander of a world empire to potentially being lion's food. But as long as we serve God above the king, God is with us. And we could ask Daniel about that. We may go from being one of the wealthiest landowners in the world to being a childless pauper. But if we refuse to curse God, God is with us. All we have to do is ask Job about that. We may go from being some of the most favorite politicians in the community to being a potential subject for being burned alive. But if once again we got to that situation because we would not give up our faith in God, God is with us, and He'll see us through it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We may go from being the most powerful, spirit-filled preacher around to being the poster child prisoner of a zealous movement meant to wipe out the church. But as long as we're doing that because we refuse to give up our faith in Christ, God is with us. You can ask Paul about that. God is always with us, even through the tough times. And sometimes they seem really to be unfair. But as long as we can know that we have God's arms around us, we can make it through those times. Why is that? Well, number one, because sometimes God uses the world's unfairness to test us. Psalm 105, verses 16 through 24. And here's where the psalmist actually writes about Joseph. Psalm 105, 16 through 24. When he summoned a famine on the land and broke all supply of bread, he had sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. His feet were hurt with fetters. His neck was put in a collar of iron, until what he had said came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him. The king sent and released him. The ruler of the people set him free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his possessions, to bind his princes at his pleasure and to teach his elders wisdom. Then Israel came to Egypt. Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. The psalmist there realized why Joseph was in the situation he was in. And he said sometimes God tests our faith through the unfairness of this world to see whether or not we can feel His arms around us, whether or not we can just trust Him to take care of the things. Regardless of what happens to us, we can handle it if we remember that God will not leave us in any situation. Let's look at Psalm 66, 8 through 20 for just a moment, and then we'll end. Psalm 66, 8 through 20. Bless our God, O peoples, let the sound of His praise be heard. Who has kept our soul among the living and has not let our feet slip? For you, O God, have tested us. You have tried us as silver is tried. You brought us into the net. You laid a crushing burden on our backs. You let men ride over our heads. We went through fire and through water, yet you have brought us out to a place of abundance. I will come into your house with burnt offerings. I will perform my own vow, or my vows to you, that which my lips uttered and my mouth promised when I was in trouble. I will offer to you burnt offerings of fattened animals with the smoke of the sacrifice of rams. I will make an offering of bulls and goats. Come and hear, all of you who fear God, and I will tell you what He has done for my soul. I cried to Him with my mouth, and high praise was on my tongue. If I had cherished iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not have listened. But truly God has listened. He has attended to the voice of my prayer. Blessed be God, because He has not rejected my prayer or removed His steadfast love from me. The psalmist here is describing a time in his life that seemed to be so unfair. And he said, God, it seemed to me like you were putting a pretty heavy burden on me. It was a great test to me. But I know that you were always there. And I know that you brought me out on the other side. And I will praise you for that. I will thank you for that. As we conclude today, a lot of those things that we feel like are the great blessings in life can be taken away from us very quickly. I think about the female boxer that gave up whenever she was faced with an opponent that some said was a man wanting to be a woman. Others are saying, no, it's truly a woman that has some type of a DNA change or whatever. But whatever it may have been, here's a woman who has fought and battled and gotten to the point that she's representing her country in the Olympics. Probably a great dream that she's had for a long time. She's worked at that. And 45 seconds into her first match, she's ready to give it up because of the strength of the opponent. As she said, I've never been hit like that before in my life, and just broke down crying. I have no doubt that she thinks life is unfair. How could this happen? Whatever the situation is, why is this happening as far as we are concerned? Well, that can happen to us in so many ways. The things that we work for, the things that we live for, the things that we dreamed of can just be taken out of the way. But if we can remember that God is with us no matter what, then we can make it through it, as long as we can feel God's arms around our shoulders. So tonight, as we think about those things, I hope that it's an encouragement to us that no matter what we're going through, God will see us through. It may seem like a long time, and it may seem like a hard road, but He will see us through. Let's keep our faith. Let's keep our belief. Let's keep our trust. And He'll always be there for us. If we can help you in any way, won't you come? All together we stand.
Who will follow Jesus, standing for the right, holding up His banner in the thickest fight, listening for His orders, ready to obey. Who will follow Jesus, serving Him today? Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus in His work above, leading others to Him, lifting prayers above. His faithful servant, in His word receive, on our side forever will the Savior be. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I.
Anyone need assistance for the Lord's Supper? No one.
I have a song, 50 years old. Any announcements anyone would like to make? Not Meals on Wheels tomorrow night, right? And there's Bible study Wednesday night. Anything else? All right. Number 778, we'll sing the first verse. 778. And William, if you don't mind, you dismiss us in prayer. I am happy today and the sun shines bright. The clouds have been rolled away. For the Savior said, whosoever will may come with Him to stay. Whosoever surely may not be